I'm going to go ahead and start while the cameras make their way back. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Asia Society. I'm Tom Nagorski. I'm the Executive Vice President here. Delighted to have you with us. We are in the heart of the UN General Assembly Week. I don't need to tell you that, which of course means snarls of traffic. So we really appreciate your making your way here from wherever you have come. And it's like that even without the rain. So we really appreciate it today. And we appreciate in particular the fact that our special guest, His Excellency the Prime Minister of Nepal, and his delegation have come to join us here in the middle of this week, which really is as crucial a time as any for us at the Asia Society. Our moderator today, Kevin Rudd from the Asia Society Policy Institute, was just saying we are a home to Asia in America and Asia in New York, and I think that's most profoundly the case during this week, so we thank you. Just a couple of words about coming events here in the next few days before we get started. In this UN General Assembly week, we have 4 more top-level leaders from Asia coming as part of our programming before the week is up. There are still spaces available for programs tomorrow with the foreign ministers from the United Arab Emirates and from Singapore. Thursday morning, the 92-year-old gentleman who The Economist recently called the comeback kid of Asia, Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad, back in power as Prime Minister in Malaysia, will join us. That is in the morning on Thursday. And at the lunch hour Friday, we have Pakistan's newly minted Foreign Minister. He'll be here in conversation with Vali Nasser from the School of Advanced International Studies at Johns Hopkins. I mentioned Kevin Rudd, my colleague here, former Prime Minister of Australia. You all know him, also President of the Asia Society Policy Institute. He is also a formidable moderator. He will moderate not just today's sessions, but all those others, apart from the Pakistanis, later this week. You can always find the latest on these events and others at asiasociety.org. And so I direct you there. Just one other program mention, which just came in our inbox today. We, on the 9th of October, we have our 5th annual Asia Game Changer Awards. Actually, Nepal has been represented very well in these groups of extraordinary people and achievers in Asia. We've had Dr. Sanduk Ruit, the great eye surgeon. This year we'll have Mira Rai, this extraordinary young woman who is an extreme runner, whatever that means, and seems to outclass all the men and thus inspire a great many young girls and women. That event is on the evening of the 9th. It's a big gala event downtown at the Cipriani Space on Broadway. But that afternoon, we have a more informal public gathering here so people can get a chance to hear from and see them. And we've just confirmed that Indra Nooyi, who is our principal honoree, the longtime chair and CEO of PepsiCo, will be with us. But so too will be several people involved in that incredible rescue effort in the caves in Thailand. So we will have the Thai official who sort of coordinated the whole rescue. We will have the coach of those boys from the soccer team will be here, as well as one of the boys themselves. That's all in the afternoon of October the 9th. Enough about upcoming events. Let's get to this one. We were just saying also it's been a long time since a leader from Nepal has been with us during the UN General Assembly sessions. Too long. We hosted the Prime Minister of Nepal last in 2008. And our guest today, the Right Honorable K.P. Sharma Oli, is the 41st Prime Minister of Nepal, head of that country's first majority government in almost 2 decades. This is his second turn, as many of you know, as Prime Minister. He did a tour of duty, I guess you could call it, in 2015 to 16. He took the oath most recently in February of this year. The Prime Minister also serves as chairman of the Nepal Communist Party, the country's largest political party. He's long been a prominent figure in Nepal's political transformation and the peace process. The Prime Minister often articulates his vision with the phrase, "Happy Nepali, prosperous Nepal." And as you are all no doubt aware, that vision can sometimes run up against obstacles. 10 changes of government since the monarchy was abolished a decade ago. The devastating earthquake, of course, 3 years ago that took more than 9,000 lives. And it's a landlocked nation with 2 rather large neighbors, India and China. To that latter challenge, the Prime Minister adopts a policy of, quote, amity with all, enmity toward none. Prime Minister will give some remarks this afternoon and then be joined by Kevin Rudd. We'll leave some time for questions. I do want to recognize that these programs are supported and made possible by the Nicholas and Sheila Platt Endowment, named for our former president. We are on the record. This event, as others, is being webcast. If you would like to ask a question from beyond the room, you can tweet it using the hashtag AsiaSocietyLive, and that hashtag can be used by anybody in this room as well. Without further ado, please, a very warm welcome to His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Nepal.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Tom Nagorski, for the kind words of introduction. The Honorable Kevin Rudd, former Prime Minister of Australia, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I begin by thanking the Asia Society for having me here today. I am also delighted to have former Prime Minister Rudd with us. Today, I stand before you to share my thoughts on peace, democracy, and development. Nepali people have emerged through various struggles and transformations at different junctures of history. At one point of time, our forefathers fought against the imperialistic forces, and our sovereignty and independence was preserved by their courage and patriotism. The generation of my parents, who were ordinary peasants, had to fight to free themselves from the clutches of feudalism and oppressive regime. Their struggle uprooted the despotic family rule of Ranas, and my generation had to fight against an autocratic monarchy. This was our final assault on an illiberal and undemocratic regime. Now, the course of Nepal's political history has changed. We are a democratic republic. But our fight is continuing in a different form as a fight against poverty, underdevelopment, and backwardness. In the course of history, our political gains have not come without heavy price. Several competitors made ultimate sacrifice and got martyrdom. Many lived in political exile while others were brutalized and suppressed. I feel a bit emotional when I recall those dark 14 years that I spent in jail, including 4 years of solitary confinement. My crime was that I fought against autocratic regime. But this never deterred, rather emboldened me to continue the struggle. Ladies and gentlemen, as a result of our sustained struggle, democracy was restored in 1990. However, our fight for full-fledged democracy continued. We had never relented in our efforts, nor was there any complacence towards our ultimate goal of progressive democratic republic. An armed conflict that began in 1996 was successfully resolved through a peace accord signed in November 2006. Key to this process was the famous 12-point understanding forged in November 2005. I was among those who played an important role in forging consensus to advance this process and bring the rebellion forced to a negotiating table. This brought the seven party political alliance and the rebellion force together to mount a combined people's movement against an absolute monarch who had snatched people's rights through unconstitutional means. The ensuing result forced the monarch to capitulate. The armed conflict ended and peace process began. The restored parliament clipped the wings of the ruling monarchy and suspended it until it was finally abolished 2 years later by a democratically elected Constituent Assembly. The Constituent Assembly was highly inclusive, having representation from all gender, caste, tribal and linguistic groups, faith communities, cultures, geographical length and breadth of the country. Dear friends, after 7 years of consultations and deliberations, arguments and debates, demands and pressures, peaceful agitation and campaigning, a highly progressive and democratic constitution was finally written for the first time by people's representatives. As a leader of the second largest political party of that time, I had an important responsibility to steer the process to a successful conclusion. Finally, the Constitution was promulgated on 20th September 2015. It has finally settled the political issue that the country confronted for a long period of time. This was a watershed moment in the political history of modern Nepal. I believe that the future generations may not have to go through the similar course of struggle for rights and freedoms anymore. Through the Constitution, we consolidated democratic polity, republican order, periodic elections, universally recognized human rights, separation of power with checks and balances, rules of law, independent judiciary, and inclusive and proportional representation system. Implementation of the Constitution is as much important as its promulgation. I had the privilege of serving the nation as the first Prime Minister under the new Constitution. I was thus incumbent upon my government to take decisive steps to implement the Constitution as per the roadmap it has provided. The Constitution came into full implementation after free and fair democratic elections held last year for the federal, provincial, and local levels. With a historical election turnout, electoral turnout, the elections resulted in 41% of women's representation and formation of stable and democratic governments at all three tiers of the federation. The government I had enjoys 3/4 support of the parliament. The policies and programs of my government were unanimously endorsed by the parliament and exercised seen rarely in the competitive democracy. This proves that the fellow Nepalis repose trust in our leadership and our ability to deliver. Dear friends, we steered a successful peace process through inclusive political dialogue and deliberations and a spirit of accommodations. Ours was a homegrown, nationally led and owned peace process. In the process, we managed to reconcile competing demands and aspirations of our diverse population. We ensured equal participation of all stakeholders and heard their voices. We recognize the important role of women in conflict resolution and peace process. We transformed state structures and institutions to mirror the mosaic of our society. And we brought the government closer to the people through restructuring of the state. The major thrust of the peace process has been to promote reconciliation in society, healing the wounds of conflict period. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a clear vision for the development of the country. I am aware of our strengths, challenges, and limitations. To sustain the political gains and deliver on the development dividend to our people, my government has set a long-term goal of prosperous Nepal, happy Nepali. To realize this goal, we must eradicate poverty, eliminate inequality and discrimination, create employment opportunities, ensure social justice, promote good governance, and ensure effective service delivery. Our aim is to attain a comprehensive democracy that empowers individuals in all spheres of national life, political, economic, social, and cultural. I have a conviction that full realization of SDGs makes this possible. Nepal is a resource-rich country, but the level of development is well below our potentials. This mismatch must come to an end sooner than later. We have identified the drivers of economic growth. These include no other vital sectors than agriculture, energy, industries, transport, infrastructure, information technology, tourism, and urban development. For making economic progress, sustainable parallel attention will be given to the climate change mitigation, adaptation, and preservation of biodiversity. Nepal is safe for foreign investment. The government remains committed to further improving business and investment climate in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, now let me turn briefly to Nepal's foreign policy priorities. Nepal is the oldest independent state in our region, with her own distinguished and glorious history. Amity with all and enmity with none remains at the heart of Nepal's foreign policy. This is inspired by the principles of UN Charter, Panchashil, non-alignment, international law, and norms of world peace. We enjoy cordial and friendly relations with both our immediate neighbors, India and China. Economic growth and prosperity in neighborhood offers us a promising prospect for the development of our country. Our relations with major powers and development partners have been all along cordial and friendly. We would like to further develop and expand our cooperative partnership with them. Extended neighborhood and labor destination countries are also in our foreign policy priority. Nepal has been playing an active role for the promotion of regional cooperation under SAARC and BIMSTEC. On multilateral front, Nepal's effort will be directed towards promoting a rule-based, just and equitable international order in which all states, small and big, fulfill their international obligations in good faith and all countries enjoy equitable opportunities to fulfill aspirations for development and prosperity. Before I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to state that Nepal's commitment to democracy and fundamental freedoms is total and unflinching. The long journey of our political struggle is synonymous to the struggle for democracy. We will not allow any compromise on democratic norms values and principles. We believe that democracy, development, and respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms are interdependent and mutually reinforcing. With these words, I conclude my remarks. I would be delighted to engage with you all in the interactive discussion. Thank you so much.
Please take a seat, Prime Minister. You sit there. Please sit. Good. Well, Prime Minister, once again, welcome to the Asia Society.
Thank you so much.
It's good to have you in New York and great to have you here in Asia's home in America. You said something very interesting in your remarks before. You said that Nepal is the oldest independent state in Asia. This, I think, is worth a few words to our American audience. You might explain a little bit of the history. I know in the days of the British Raj, you in Nepal gave the British a very hard time and stopped them at your borders. So why don't you explain to our audience just a little bit of the history before we get into the current period?
It's a matter of pride for us that Nepal remained always an independent country. When the imperialistic era was in such a situation where no sun was setting of a colonial country. But there was, of course, in Asia, oil spot, where the rays or shadow of colonialism were never casted. There was always freedom, always independence.
So how did you stop the British? None of the rest of us did.
Yeah. Of course, we had to sacrifice for that. We had to fight. Our ancestors fought with a knife. They are just knives, and against the cannons and guns. But they resisted, and the country remained always sovereign. And we lost the war, of course, and we had to lose some parts, territory of the country. And were compelled to resist in agreement, but the sovereignty of the country was again continued. It was preserved.
Well, it's a remarkable achievement across, let's call it, colonial Asia, where for 400 to 500 years, really, you had one country or civilization after another falling to the British or the French or the Dutch or the Spanish or the Portuguese. So, well done. Which brings us to the present period of politics and the remarkable period of the last quarter of a century. You had some return to democracy in 1990, and then a very tortuous path through to the promulgation of the new Constitution of 2015. And then you have the elections of last year, where you were elected with a 64% majority on behalf of the Nepal Communist Party. I was told before that when you were nominated for the parliament, you had something in excess of 78% of the parliament in support of you, and for the government's program, when you put it to the parliament, with 100% parliamentary support. Now, why wasn't I able to achieve that in Australia? So, tell me how you got to there with this extraordinary development of the Constitution over that period of time, and what stability do you think it gives the country for the future?
We have not that very long history of democratic movement, but we have history of different types of movements. As we talk about the movement for sovereignty, movement for independence, etc., and movement for social awareness and against autocratic regimes. But finally, in 1951, Nepal was entered into a new era after the downfall of Rana oligarchy, the family rule of the Ranas. And after that, there was again tug of war for the power between the political parties, democratic forces, and the monarchy. The monarchy was still over there. And in 60, again, the monarchy took over unconstitutionally and forcibly. The democracy was again, the absence of democracy was not accepted by the people. But for 30 years again we had to fight. And we were watching the ups and downs of the global movements and achievements of the democratic movements and failures of different types of ups and downs. And with this experience, we launched a struggle for democracy, for the cause of democracy. As I mentioned that I spent myself 14 years in prison, but I am not the person who spent longest period in prison. But more than me, there are others also. And so many people were killed. And after that, we formed an alliance between different types of parties who believe in democracy, who are against autocratic regime. And the movement in 1990, it was successful. And we, at that time also, promulgated a new constitution, but that was not enough, and that was not drafted and promulgated by the Constituent Assembly, by the representatives of the people. So it was not exactly properly accepted by the people. People were willing to promulgate the Constitution by themselves, by their representatives. And we did that after some years. But during this period, we had some rebel groups, and there was violence, and there was different types of struggles. And finally, as I mentioned that in 2005, there was 12-point understanding between the rebels and the democratic forces. It was particularly against autocratic monarchy, autocracy. And then we got success, that people supported the alliance and supported that movement, popular movement. And in 2006, April, as I mentioned in my speech, that there was a new turning point. The dissolved parliament, which was dissolved by the, unconstitutionally dissolved by the king, was restored, and that clipped the power of the king. And after that, Constituent Assembly elections took place, and the first Constituent Assembly failed to promulgate the Constitution, but it gave one very important contribution to Nepalese politics, that is, that ended the monarchy and declared Republican, one thing. And but we had to again go to the next election for Constituent Assembly in 2013, and that promulgated the Constitution within 20 months about after the elections. But there was another problem. In April 2015, when we were going to promulgate the Constitution, draft the Constitution, we were at the final stage of the drafting of the Constitution. At that time, the devastating earthquake took place. 9,000 people lost their lives, 23,000 people were wounded, and 900,000 houses and monuments, etc., were destroyed. In such a situation, even then, in September 20, we promulgated the new Constitution from the Constituent Assembly. And our at the same time we abolished monarchy. At the same time we settled the problem of conflict. There and we managed the arms and combatants of the rebels and promulgated the constitution, and then new government was there, and I got opportunity to lead the government, and with a feeling of accommodation and addressing the demands of the people. Of course, there were some differences, and of course there were some differences and class. We can say not class, but differences, and on the question of interest, and interest groups were of course active to insert their interest inside the constitution. That was very usual, but more than, even in such a situation, more than 92% of votes were in favor of constitution, and later on there was unanimously the constitution was accepted, and all the forces took part in the elections.
Bringing together the Nepali Communist Party must have been a challenge. Previously you have Maoists, they're a revolutionary party, and that is, you obtain political power through the barrel of a gun. I've read the history of communist movement, and back in the days of the Third International, we split between parliamentary parties and revolutionary parties. And then there's this democratic parliamentary tradition of communism also in Nepal. How did you manage to bring these two things together? Not easy.
In my opinion, the world is very dynamic, everything is being changed, and in the history, America raised weapons time and again for different regions. And in the course of democratic movements also in different parts of the world, democratic forces neither left nor either left or right, there was no difference. But for democracy, for their causes, there is weapons in history. So only the Maoist party isn't single party to raise the weapons. But Nepali Congress and other political parties also in Nepal raised weapons against Rana oligarchy and other autocratic systems different times. And the people, when the constitutional ways and peaceful means and ways are blocked, and the voices and interests of the people are suppressed by the force, then people tolerate for some time and they retaliate after some time. That was, I think, we resolved, we settled the problem of violence, and that is important. We don't want to go back to the history, but more than that, we want to bring change in the society. There was violence, people were being killed.
Yep.
And the situation is now changed, and that is important. Situation is changed and there is peace. Combatants are inside the, some of them are inside the army, they are included, accepted in army, and some of them were, they went back to their own jobs. Even they got some incentives, and weapons were handed over or destroyed. So now the political party completely gave up the policy of violence. Yes, of course, sometime, once upon a time, they were telling that political power comes out from the barrel of the gun. They were telling like that, but now they say that from the ballot it comes, and they are getting everything from the ballot.
That's a very good change in slogan.
Yeah.
From the barrel of a gun through the ballot box.
Yes.
Must be interesting, though, if you're a government of Nepal made up of the Nepali Communist Party. What's it like sitting down with the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government? Do your old Maoists have discussions with their old Maoists?
I don't think so. In my opinion, I think we have we have a, as I mentioned before too in my speech, that we have a long history of sacrifice and struggle. And now we have entered into a new era of economic development. We fought for political freedoms for a long time, once and again. But now, there is constitution, there is system, there is elected government, there are three tiers of governments, and the turnout of the votes in the elections was very excellent, more than 70%. At the first round, there was more than 80%, and even in the last round, there was more than 70% turnout of the votes. So people are enthusiastic in this political change, and we have completed transitional phase. And now our focus is to, as I said, that we have friendship with all, no enmity.
No,
We have just friendship, and we have very good relations with Chinese Communist Party, with Democratic Party of USA, Republican Party of USA, with President Trump, with Xi Jinping, with Mr. Modi. And
well,
others.
that covers three very interesting
and,
bases.
and we want to get support from all for our development.
Yeah.
We are working for, we have established government now, majority government, and now we cannot wait for a longer time. We have to eliminate poverty, we have to meet SDG goals within 2030, we have to meet our target of graduating our country from LDC within 2-3 years, and we have to bring fundamental change in our society economically. So we focus our efforts, our resources, our strength for good governance and for economic development. But it's not enough. It will be late if ourselves we do. So we need support and cooperation from our friends as well, from south, from north. It means from India, from China. We have very good relationship with both of. We don't care about the colors.
That's a good approach. Well, congratulations on the political achievement. Politics is hard, and you've suffered a lot personally. And bringing about a democratic constitution, given the complex history, is no small achievement. But as you've just said, you're going on to look at the future. You've got a new national economic development strategy. You have 30 million Nepalis across a vast country in terms of its mountainous terrain, challenges of transport infrastructure, of telecommunications, of education, of health services. Give me a sense of your development strategy over the next 4 or 5 years. And as you said, where are you now seeking international investment?
We cannot just focus our efforts in one direction, because we have to develop from each and every aspects and angles. Like 2/3 of majority of our population depends on agriculture, and agriculture is not advanced, not developed. So we have to modernize our agriculture, commercialize our agriculture, and mechanize. And by this process, we have to bring the people out from agriculture to the industry, maybe a small industry, agro-based industries and others. And in service sector, in tourism, in commerce sector, we have to bring the people out from agriculture, because that huge number of population is not necessary for the agriculture sector. And without modernizing, without mechanizing this sector, we cannot do this. So we have to give priority to the agricultural sector as well. And to bring change in the agricultural system, we have to increase production, agricultural products. We have to use new technology for the production, increasement of production. In this way, but we cannot just, as I said, that we cannot give priority just for one area. But at the same time, for infrastructure, for connectivity, for IT sector, and for establishing industries, and to bring balance our business, our trade, which is quite unbalanced in a balanced situation now. We have to bring in positive direction to this. For that, we have to increase production. We have to produce export items. We have to lessen our import items. In this way, we have to work in different areas. For that, we have to prepare our human resource, formal education, and as well as vocational trainings to the relevant people. Whatever job they do, their skills and trainings they must provide it. In this way, and another way, that we have to invite foreign investment as well, so that we are trying to create such an environment where foreign investment is attracted to come.
One of the projects which has attracted some controversy in your own country is the major hydroelectric dam. From memory, I think it's about 1,600 megawatts. It's a big dam. Was suspended for a while and then has been recommenced. I think there's a Chinese construction firm, from memory, Gezhouba. Once built, this, as I read it, this dam would double the installed capacity of your country. So where's that project up to? How important is it, and how controversial does it remain within your country?
Some months before, when Indian Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi was visiting Nepal, then me and him both inaugurated the Arun III project. That is 900 megawatts project that we lay down the stone, not inaugurated, lay down the stone. And that is on progress, and that will be the first big project and to be completed. And similarly, we are inviting investors from all over the world. And we are giving attention to reach in power purchase agreement with different countries. And during some 1.5 months before BIMSTEC summit, we signed agreement about cross-border transmission lines, where we can sell our electricity to other countries also, to India, to Bangladesh, and to other countries also. And in this way, countries now can invest in Nepal and hydropower sector because they can sell the electricity to other countries also. And ourselves, we need more electricity. There is even now shortage of electricity, and we are also, even now we are buying about 400 megawatts of electricity from India. And of course, you asked about the Budi Gandaki, that is one project. We decided to study. The project was awarded to Chinese company Gajawa before, but I don't know why that was again terminated. And now again Gajawa applied to work, showed the interest. And we said that, okay, we'll study. And for study and to have talks with the Gajoba company, we decided to give authority to the Ministry of Energy. And that is beneficial for the country. And there is no controversy. If other countries want, they can invest because we have enough capacity, enough potential of hydropower, and very attractive projects we have. They can invest. So for other countries also, other investors also, if they want, there are projects ready to. And if any countries are interested, we welcome.
Good. Well, the message to everyone here in New York is Nepal's open for business, open for investment, and all of you here who have come in the door from Wall Street, you can take a card from the Prime Minister's delegation later. Now, we're open to questions, Q&A here, and so as people throw their hand up, if you could give me your name, where you come from, and a short question. If you start delivering a speech, I'll probably ask you to sit down. So, and we Australians are notoriously impolite about such things. And so, sir, you were first with your hand up. Yeah.
Mr. Prime Minister, welcome to New York. My name is Mark Munger. I had the privilege of serving as a Peace Corps teacher in Ilam Jila in Mechianchal during 1966 and 67, and have visited many times to see my students and friends. The path of development assistance in Nepal has perhaps been uneven. What can the people and government of Nepal expect of donors to improve development assistance? And what may donors expect of the people and government of Nepal to improve development assistance?
So your name again, sir, was?
Mark Munger.
Mark Munger, who has been previously a Peace Corps worker in Nepal.
Aitabari Bajar.
Aitabari Bajar is Ilam.
And I can't interpret that for anybody. So, Prime Minister.
Exactly. I couldn't catch his. My attention was that he was working in Eastern Nepal.
Yeah, he's a Peace Corps worker, and his question essentially was, how do we improve the circumstances in the country for development assistance projects into the future? Am I right, sir?
Yes, sir.
Good. There you go.
I would like to thank the US government, first of all, for MCC project. Very attractive project. And before I left Nepal this time, Cabinet decided that project is a project of national pride that MCC is launching. Of course, our friends from all over the world, different countries, are supporting us. As you mentioned that you were a Peace Corps volunteer in 60s. And Ilam, at that time, perhaps there was no motorable road. Perhaps you had to go by foot from Japa. Since then, our friends are supporting to cooperating, supporting, donating to Nepal for its improvement. And now the situation is completely different. when you were in Nepal at that time, the campaign was being launched by the US government to eradicate malaria in Tarai and plain lands of Tarai. But now the situation is completely changed. The level of education, level of skills, and level of economy, and mostly the political situation and social environment in Nepal is completely changed. Before, if a foreigner appears somewhere in the market or in the district or in village, people were coming to see them. But now the situation is not like that. So many foreigners are wandering here and there, and that is nothing new for the people of Nepal. And the political situation is very favorable because there is democracy, there is transparency, there is accountability, and the government is committed to develop economically. And for that, as I said, that we are concentrating our entire efforts, strength, and resources for economic development. For that, good governance is like prerequisite as we thinking. And we are trying to convince our friends to support us in this crucial juncture, in this important juncture, that if we proceed and take a speed, then we can go ahead. But now we are starting. So we have to gear up. In such a situation, we need assistance and cooperation. And as well as investment. And if there is anything, the investors know what type of environment we have to create for investment. What is their demand? We can talk to them and we can try our best, or will, of course, create the situation, favorable situation for the investment too, in each and every sector, because we have in agriculture sector, in educational, in health sector, in hydropower sector, in other tourism sector, in hotel sector, in there are so many sectors we have to develop. So support in education, in health, and in other areas as well, and investment as well in each and every sector is needed.
Now, I'd like to encourage women in the audience to get their hand up as well. I like to keep a gender balance flowing here. A lady at the back, that's you, Ma'am.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
We cannot hear, I'm sorry. No, we'll get you a substitute microphone though. Try it one more time.
Hello.
Namaste, everybody. My name is Sherry Anna. I've had the good fortune and opportunity to serve as co-founder and program coordinator for Dance Theater of Nepal in New York for the last 20 years. My question is short. It's two parts. The first part is, in view of the development that is obviously important to every country, how is Nepal responding to the kind of disaster capitalism that millions of Americans have agreed is destroying this country through horrific brutality in factory farming, causing terrible climate change and the rest? There are a lot of investors in there doing terrible things
Next
all over
question.
the world.
Yeah.
Second question is, we know that education and health are very important challenges here and in Nepal. What steps are being taken in terms of curriculum to teach very small children, teens, students of all ages, that the caste system is dead and is antiquated?
Okay, thank you for that. So there's a good sharp question for you.
Thank you very much. Of course, we are talking about the economic development, but it doesn't mean that we do not care about other aspects and consequences of economic development. And we are not giving a stress on economic development alone, but as well as being aware of the environment. And we do not exploit the earth beyond its capacity and destroying the balance of the ecological system and the environment. We are careful about that. And particularly we have to be careful because we are a mountainous country, and the climate and weather produces the mountains and the ocean produce the climate and weather. So it's very important that I want to make clear about our vision that we are a mountainous country, so we are not talking for our own interest, but it is not only interest of our country and our people and our area, but the question of climate change, global warming, etc. is related to the ocean and to the mountains. And we have mountains, and mountains, I used to say that some 15, 20 meters thick ice, or 30% of land is shouldering it. 15 to 20, 25 meters thick layer of ice. Why? That is to gradually recharge the earth, gradually recharge the other hilly areas, gradually recharge the plain areas. So if, and there is another aspect, if the seas are polluted, then the cloud goes up with the acid and pollution, and the acidic snow or water or rain falls on the mountains, and the ice cannot remain there. It means the recharge system of the earth and natural cleaning system of the earth is destroyed. It means there is devastation in the future. So while we are giving importance to the question of economic development, at the same time, carbon emission and other so many areas we are giving attention. So renewable energy, we are giving stress. And as we talked before about the high dam project and reservoir project, it is necessary not only for the production of electricity, but also to maintain the temperature of the earth, to control global warming system, which is increasing very seriously. And this morning we heard that the Secretary General was raising this question very seriously, the question of global warming and the climate change. So we are aware of all these things. In the first question, I would like to be assured that Nepal is very seriously working and trying to draw the attention of the world on this question. And this question should not be left alone on us because we are being a mountainous country, but others also should share this important question. And second, as you said that the question of health and education, of course that is very important, and I want to make it clear that the social values and norms and social system, family system, and the relationship between people and people is a little bit, we can pride of our civilization, of our social system, of our culture, and our combined family system as well. 4-5 generations live together in one house, and in our ethnic groups, so many groups are like such. How many members you have in your family? If we ask them, they say that 135. They eat in the same pot, in the same kitchen. They live in different huts, but the yard is same. Around they have huts, and
It's bigger than your average Irish Catholic family.
so our education is based on our glorious past and very important and valuable present social systems, and we look forward and go ahead with modern scientific and technological knowledge as well. So we gave slogan, prosperous Nepal and happy Nepali. Prosperity itself is not enough to get or to make the people happy. People cannot be happy alone with prosperity, but there must be atmosphere of that sort of atmosphere where people can be happy. Otherwise, we may have enough property or money, but if there is threat of life or there is humiliation, there is discrimination, then we cannot be happy. So a civilized society with prosperity. Prosperous and civilized, so that prosperous and happy. We didn't say that just prosperity, but prosperity and happy. Prosperous Nepal, happy Nepali, that the slogan we coined. We had thousands of years before, our ancestors told that they chanted some mantras. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve shantu niramaya in Sanskrit. That was some 4,000-5,000 years before they said that all should be all happy and fearless, prosperous. That was the slogan.
I'm looking at your ambassador because our time has actually passed, but I'm going to ask if we've got time for 2 more questions. Nod or shake your head, whichever is appropriate. They're nodding happily. They look prosperous as well, so they're prosperous and happy up the front here. Now I'm going to take the lady here, and there's a gentleman who's in the middle at the back there. That's you, sir, behind the chap in the salmon cap. So you first, ma'am, and then back to you, and then I'll wind up.
Thank you, Prime Minister. My name is Jean Ninh Nguyệt, Vietnamese Americans. Would you kindly share with us the secret of the communist parties in the past? How did your communist parties have so many different parts of communist parties in it? And how did you work so well to be so successful compared to many other communist nations in the world? And I admire you, and I wish you all the best. There was a saying that people should call your country a social democratic society rather than a communist party. Would you agree to that?
There's 2 good, sharp questions for you, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. In my opinion, if there was no solar system, then the meaning of universe would be nothing. If there was no Earth and solar system, the solar system would be meaningless. If there was no life in the Earth would not be perhaps meaningless. And among them, human being and my human brain is the most important thing in my opinion. But we diverted a little bit, sometimes giving unnecessarily importance to our interest and selfishness. So we knew to make differences and quarrel, but forgot to work together and live together. So we have started a new campaign. Let's work together, live together. Listen others. And if there are differences, okay, there are different heads, different minds, there may be differences too. So we can tolerate those, and tolerance, coexistence. And our country is a country of diversity from highest peak of the world, and within a very short distance of about 200 kilometers, there is low land just a few meters above the sea. In such a situation, we have social and other diversities also, biodiversities, and so many diversities. So our country is the country of diversity, and the diversity teaches us to live together. We have mountains. If there were no mountains, then there would be no life. No rivers without mountains. No fountains, no streams. And if no rivers, no stream, no water, no ice, then there would be no life. So we knew mountains are high and the plains are low, but they are interrelated. So I think that we have to tolerate each other, listen each other, respect each other, work each other, and live together. This is particularly my principle, so that I tried my best to bring together all the diverse opinions and interests in one place. Common opinion for the nation, for the people, and for the human beings, for the betterment of, for the nation, for the people, and for the human beings. That is the idea.
Very last question is a chap up the back in the middle. That's you, sir. Yep.
Thank you.
Can't hear you. Third time lucky.
Third time's the charm. Mr. Prime Minister, my name is Ashwin Joshi. I work at an investment management firm here, and I am from Kathmandu, Nepal.
I told you would bring Wall Street.
My question to you is, many in Nepal are excited about the rail that will connect China to Kathmandu, and China is really excited to give us the debt that we need to build that as well. Many countries in our neighborhood have fallen into that debt trap, including Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Malaysia. How do you suggest, or how are you looking to avoid falling into the same debt trap? And Prime Minister Rudd, as an expert on China, I'd love to hear your opinion on this as well.
This is this Prime Minister's forum, not mine. So that's called avoiding the question. So over to you, PM.
Okay, exactly speaking, I don't understand what is the meaning of that very debt trap. Countries are getting loan, investing. We need in very cheaper rates. Loans we need, of course, and we invest. To save us from debt trap, if there is any country, any bank, to provide us without any interest, we welcome that. Otherwise, there is no way. We need money, we need investment, we need support, and not only without interest also. If countries can donate us, being based on our priority and our necessity. Otherwise, we do not accept. With our priority and necessity, if somebody donates us, that's welcome, must welcome. If not, without interest, again welcome, and in cheaper interest, that's good. We do not accept from any, there is no compulsion for us to accept. So no question of debt draft, etc. I think, I don't know exactly what the meaning people want to say, debt trap.
I think, Prime Minister, it proceeds from a recent IMF report on the extent to the impact of various loans extended by our Chinese friends, in particular for Belt and Road Initiative projects. And it's a relative calculation about the capacity of the national budget of the country in question to sustain that debt on its balance sheet to repay over time. I think, as you correctly said, it becomes a set of sovereign decisions about how much is tolerable within normal receipts over time.
According to our priority and necessity.
Absolutely, it's a sovereign matter. I think as we draw our discussion to a close, Prime Minister, I'd like to commend you for your remarks on climate change leadership and the view that you have about your particular significance given where you are in the Himalayas. And for all of us who are concerned about the planet, as I am and have been throughout my own public career, thank you. In terms of collaboration with you and Nepal on these questions, we at the Asia Society run a climate change program on Asia, and we would like to discuss that further with you because we see what happens to the snow-capped mountains of your country and more broadly across the Himalayan mountain range as fundamental to so many questions for the future of the planet and for the river systems and the people who are fed by it. So thank you for that leadership. A question, a brief one, as I've listened to you carefully this evening. I've admired the fact that you have been a campaigner for a long time. Easy for us in Western democracies. All the fights happened 100 years ago, okay? Sometimes 200 years ago. French took quite a long time. It wasn't entirely peaceful either. But for you, it's been quite recent. And so how did you sustain yourself personally and spiritually in 14 years in prison and with 4 years in solitary? This is a hard thing, a very hard thing.
There were two ways, two alternatives. Either that was not my choice, and either I had to die. I didn't die.
We've worked that out.
So I had to, anyway, bear whatsoever. That was, if it was my choice, then you may say me that you are quite foolish. Why you choose that way? That was not my choice. I fought for democracy. I was demanding democracy, not imprisonment. Mm-hmm. And when I was arrested and imprisoned, then I had no choice. I had to spend there. I had to sit there anyway until I am alive. And the situation was not favorable, of course. Not like now. Now the situation is changed. If people are inside prison, even then the conditions in prison, inside prison, are very different. Now police cannot torture. You cannot keep people without food. But for 1.5 months, I was put without food.
1.5 months?
Months.
Wow.
And I was so heavily tortured, but there was nobody to shout against that. Nobody was raising question. That was simple, because I was against autocracy. If somebody fights or raises voice against autocracy, has to suffer. That was a simple thing. So those days were completely different than of today. So today, I am Prime Minister. If I use even a simply tough word, then people say, what is this? But at that time, everything was done. But that was acceptable. Not acceptable, but there is no way. So, the life in prison is not a very memorable type of thing. That is, it was very tough, unpleasant, torturous. And I continuously fought. I didn't bow down my head because for the future generation, the situation should be changed. I had to tolerate everything, but I cannot permit the situation go on forever to tolerate for our generation to generation like me in prison, in isolatory confinement. So we had to end the autocracy for that reason. So that in Nepal now nobody needs to go prison except who commit social crimes, etc. For that, law and order, to control and to provide security and protect the rights of the people, to control crimes, control drugs, control torture against women, control other unsocial activities. Only people are punished, and that according to the law of the land.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, could you please express your thanks for the attendance of His Excellency KP Sharma Oli, the Prime Minister of Nepal. Thank you, PM. And thank you for coming to be with us, the Asia Society, this evening. We've got other things happening in the week, as Tom Nagorski mentioned earlier on. Visits by the foreign ministers of Singapore, the Foreign Secretary of the United Arab Emirates, and Dr. Mahathir Mohamad in conversation with me on Thursday morning. That should be fun. Look forward to seeing you at our future events. Good evening to you all.